Okay, this is a fantastic follow-up to the previous video because today I got some fantastic news. You may remember me talking about how I was a teacher. Well, I was a teacher, but I taught several years ago and I was in a classroom and I was trying to do the public service loan forgiveness program and I was told that I didn't qualify. It was a big, like, it's there's a lot of drama around it. You can read all about all the lawsuits and things like that against student loan service providers who denied students um, access to this program. Like they were signed up and then they said, oh, no, you're not really in it for a number of reasons. Like, for example, if you paid $1 more than what your monthly payment was, then that payment wouldn't count. So basically, you were to teach for 10 years and then you would pay your student loan during those 10 years a certain amount. And then after that, the rest of the loan would be forgiven. So that's the program. It's not just for teachers. A friend of mine just got it. He is a police officer, military, really anyone in the public sector. And the reason for this program is because if you if you don't have incentives like that, you're going to have trouble attracting people to these jobs, as we can see right now. You can look around at the major cities right now. They're seeing like a huge shortage of police officers. I mean, really, these guys have such a hard job. And, they're often criticized and things like that. And every day you're putting your life on the line. I mean, it's a hard job. And some people just, it's not worth it to them. They don't make a lot of money either. So, so this program was put in place around the time, like right before the financial crisis. Actually, in Michigan, we were already in a financial crisis, which kind of consisted from like, I don't know, the late 90s on. But this was put in place in like 2007 to attract people to public sector jobs. Now, I love teaching, so it was a no brainer for me. I was like, oh, cool. Yeah, I'm doing it. And I knew that going in. I was like, okay, I didn't want to get a degree in education because I just couldn't stomach those classes. They were terrible. But I got degrees in English. And then I knew that every state that I looked at that time had an alternative routes to teacher licensure program. And I also was a substitute teacher and a tutor. So it's not like I was walking into a classroom blind. And my mom was a teacher. I spent a lot of time in her classroom as well. So I went on, finished my degrees, and I, you know, went on to teach. And then after about four years, my student loan service provider, like I was asking about an income-based repayment plan because at the time I was making $28,000, and this is a time when Salt Lake City, Utah was becoming more expensive. So my apartment rent was going up constantly. Like they were just raising the rent like on a regular basis. And I had just taken like a $10,000 pay cut because some crazy stuff with the state of Utah, because I was an alternative routes to teacher licensure candidate. The job that I loved, I had to leave and I had to take a $10,000 pay cut. But regardless of that, I always worked for Title I schools. It was kind of a thing with me. I wanted to work either at Title I schools or I wanted to work at a private school, one or the other. I was open to both. And I loved the actual teaching, but the rest of it I did not love. And the pay was getting worse and worse. It's not like a job where your pay goes up, you get a little raise here and there. It wasn't really like that at the time. Utah has done better over the past, let's say, 3 years with teacher raises. But I mean, some of these people hadn't had raises in 20 years, and that's not an exaggeration. They literally had not given some teachers raises in 20 years. Because in Utah and other places too, I'm sure, teaching is kind of something that you do as maybe a lady who is going to stop working for a while after she gets married and has kids. And I don't say that like there's anything wrong with that, because it's actually a great plan. You have a job, you don't make that much, but it's okay because you plan on getting married and having kids, and then you're going to be the stay-at-home mom and all that stuff. A lot of people do that. I mean, to be honest, it sounds perfect to me. But because of that, there's a lot of teacher turnover, or at least there was when I was teaching, and the pay just wasn't there. It was not there. And it got to the point where in 2016, after fighting with the state of Utah for what, 4 years to get my teaching license, they came out with a program where you could literally just pay $70, take an online ethics quiz where they had about 10 questions, and they would just send you a teaching license. And that's how I ended up finally getting my official teaching license, which has now expired because the moment that I got it, they just sent it through email, like you don't even get like a real thing in the mail or anything. They sent it through email. And I got it, and I just remember thinking, I don't even want this thing now. But I continued to teach for 2 more years after that. But back to the student loan. So this year, there were several renewals of these programs, these public service student loan program. There's a teacher loan forgiveness program as well. And there is an income-based repayment forgiveness program. Now, here's the thing that people don't quite get. Student loan forgiveness is already a thing and it has been for years, but because during the financial crisis, a lot of student loans, like my student loans, were farmed out in 2000 and so yeah, in 2008, my student loans were moved to a student loan service provider, and that was because the government was in big trouble and they didn't want to default on debt and things like that, so they moved them out to these like quasi governmental agencies. So my loans were moved there, and I have federal student loans, but they're managed by a student loan service provider, but they're still federal student loans. But everything that happens to federal student loans don't apply to my loans because of this student loan service provider. For example, the pandemic freeze on interest did not happen for me. My loans still continued to accumulate interest all throughout the pandemic. There was never a break. Now I am way ahead on payments, and like if I had seen that interest pause, I would have just paid it off. It would be gone. It would have been gone last year. But because the interest continues to grow on my loans all throughout the pandemic, like you're just always fighting that. Now I don't have a ton of interest to. Now it's just the daily interest because I've paid off, the interest that's added at the beginning. I've already paid all that off. So my payments pretty much go just to the principal. And at this point, I don't need to make another payment until I think the end of next year. So it's not like I have a ton left. But the fact that I applied earlier this year for teacher loan forgiveness, um, and I'm eligible because I taught in Title I schools. I was in the public sector. I was eligible, and the student loan service provider lied and said that I wasn't. Not just me. There's there's a lot of drama about it. You can read all about it all over the internet. There's tons of articles, lawsuits, things like that. And because like the story was the same. The story was, like students were saying, I called up my student loan service provider and I asked for an income-based repayment. Like during the economic crisis, I saw my wages just like they just almost dropped overnight. It went from I was making about, $28,000. This is like 2008. So I was doing okay. And so my wages dropped to about 16,000 because my job could no longer provide me with full time because Michigan was in terrible shape. And I called the student loan service provider and they said, okay, you're eligible for income-based repayments. And I was like, great. So then I paid, and in a few more months, I had to reapply. I think it was 6 months at that time. I don't know what it is now. 6 months. And at that time, I was making $20,000 because I had gotten a second job. So I had two jobs that's making $20,000, and they told me I was disqualified. And I was like, what? Are you serious? So it went back to my regular student loan payment, and I could not pay that at the time. And that's when they said, well, forbearance, that's the only way to go. And this was the story that they were telling people, that they were denied for income-based repayment plans. And then all of a sudden in 2014, my student loan service provider told me that I could no longer even apply for income based repayment plans. I had to be on some type of plan. And, like the standard, the gradual, things like that. So I went on the gradual because I was making $28,000 at that point and I was struggling. And Salt Lake City was starting to become more expensive at that point. And it was like I was already operating on a pretty thin margin, but I was doing okay. It was fine. Like I just budgeted and I was okay. I didn't have any, streaming services, no cable, anything like that. I had internet because I was working from home. But yeah. So this is a story that you'll hear over and over again. And I have continued to pay the student loan no matter what. Like if I didn't eat, I didn't eat, but I would pay the student loan no matter what. So the fact that today I found out that my teaching did count for something because now I've reapplied for the teacher loan forgiveness program. And I also am eligible for the income based repayment program. All of those things, I can actually fit into any of them because I have been consistently paying on my student loan. So the day after I handed in my letter of resignation at work, I am thankful for the time I spent teaching because now it is going to bring the student loan saga to an end in my life. That's all from me teaching. And I'm very thankful, grateful for this happening. And it couldn't happen at a better time when I'm leaving my job to pursue my writing and manage our rentals. I'm super excited, very, very thankful. And the teaching, I guess it did mean something. So that is my great surprising news that I never thought I'd get. But before I let you go, I do want to put it out there that if you have been working in the public sector, say maybe you got denied for the public service student loan forgiveness program, or if you've been teaching and you weren't in the program, in anything like that, you really need to consider what's going on with your student loans and if you can consolidate. And I know there aren't a ton of people that have federal student loans that aren't really federal student loans anymore because they're managed by loan service providers. But if you do have that, it's an old Stafford loan or something like that, you need to consider this. Like, seriously, this could be the ticket for you. And if you have those loans, you've been paying on them probably for 20, some people have been paying 30 years on them. So make sure that you take advantage of this. This is important. And I just I'm not a fan of like forgiving people who aren't paying their student loans. I'm not a fan of that. But if you've been paying your student loans for 20 years, then you probably have repaid the loan and then some. If you haven't, then, if you're still working in the public sector, then hey, you know what? We are going to get that back from you as you make less money than the rest of us because you're in the public sector. So I'm okay with that too. What I don't think is good, and like, I'm not going to judge anybody whether they take the forgiveness or not, whatever. I'm not going to judge people on that, but because I know that, it kind of is something that we do for corporations, we do for banks, and I understand why we do it for them because generally they're giving something back, jobs, they're keeping people employed, things like that. And I'm totally fine with all of that. But I also know how the student loan service providers really play games with people and tacked on an additional $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 from forbearance fees when those people could have been making payments in the income-based repayment plan that would have counted toward, them getting to the 20, 25 years of forgiveness. So after my kind of angry rant, I hope it didn't come off too angry. After my kind of angry rant, I've kind of calmed down and, like, I'm a firm believer in if you start moving toward what you want, the universe does open up and it helps you with that. And I think that this is just one of those ways. I turned in my letter of resignation yesterday and it was hard because I really like my supervisor. I really like my team. So it was hard to leave them. But as like I turned it in after we had a meeting where we used to have this, this is just ridiculous. So the entire time that I've worked for this place, almost 4 years, we've always had a 7 day turnaround time on grading. And the reason that we have that is because in each class, there are generally, like around 1,200 students. That's a lot. Well, now they've changed it to 5 days because the school has become nothing more than customer service. Like we are basically customer service. It is too much of a business. It's not about education anymore. It's about turn those papers around as fast as possible because students want them faster. But if you're doing that, especially with some of the issues that we see, some of our students haven't been in school for 20 years. If you have not written a paper in 20 years, you're going to need some guidance there. But if we are rushing through to make sure that we get the papers graded, I mean, are we really doing them a favor, or is it just making them happy? And that seems to be what the goal is. So yesterday we found out we just have 5 days to grade the papers. And after that, I typed up my letter of resignation. I sent it in. And I love my supervisor. Like, we'll still be friends after this. And he just said, he was so happy for me and, all those things that I'll tell the rest of the team next week. But this comes at the perfect time. The perfect time. It's like, I feel like I put something in motion here, finally saying, I'm done. I'm just done with this. I need to move on. I feel stagnant in it. I feel like I put things in motion and now they're happening. This is so great. I never thought that this would happen. So that's about it for now. Hope all is well. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.